Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. My name is Sean,
And I'm Missy.
and we're going to do something different. We're going to, not that they haven't been covered ad nauseum by every other horror podcast, but we got to get our piece in too. But seriously, we're going to cover occasionally the Friday the 13th movies in order, and starting this episode with the first three. I don't know what the impetus for this is, other than Missy really likes them. I have a slight fondness bordering on complete frustration and disappointment with them. And I like to talk to Missy about movies. So these seem like movies that we should talk about. That's really just about
Right.
it. Um, I like to, in doing this show, we can, I can kind of see through other people's eyes and see what they see in movies, and a lot of times it's about context, and something you don't like you might not like because you don't have the right context for it, and once you get the context it's like, oh, and then you see it in a different way. And I guess maybe I'm hoping for that with Friday the 13th, because like I said, I do have a fondness for them in theory, but in reality when I watch them I'm often just completely like, are you fucking kidding me? So you have been rewatching them, Missy, and then I decided, I don't know, I watched Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and then 4, and I won't watch any more of those. I tried that a couple years ago and I realized that's where I draw my line with those.
Okay.
Uh Around the same time, this is 2018, 2019, I was going to do all the Fridays. I think they were all on Prime. I got to 7 and I bowed out. I love Jason Goes to
Okay.
Hell. But it is the road to hell to get to Jason Goes to Hell, in my opinion. Um,
Really?
but
I
so
mean,
yeah, well,
but there were so many fun ones.
so here's the thing. So here's what I realized watching him this time. So I watched 3 and 4 recently because they were on Netflix. 3 and 4 of Nightmare, and then you were watching these, and I was like, you know what?
Hmm.
I'm gonna pop over and watch the first one because it'd been a while, and I have this thing. I've seen the many of these. I don't know how many times since I was a kid, right?
Right. Same.
There's so many things about them that I just don't know what happens in what movie. Like part 3 was a good example this time. Going into it the other night, couldn't have told you the first thing that was in part 3 other than I know he gets a hockey mask. Not because I remember it,
Right.
but just I know, right? And I know that
Right.
it's like the 3D movie with the 3D gags. But I couldn't tell you anything else. As I'm watching, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the one with the fucking slob that owns the crappy grocery store that drinks out of the
Hmm.
bottle and eats out of the can and has the rabbit, right? Oh yeah, Shelley, who I'd rather hang out with Franklin from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre than hang out with Shelley for even 5 fucking minutes. Most annoying character possibly ever.
I I don't agree with you.
Yes, I
Franklin drives me
know.
crazy, but
Same, but I swear to God, I feel like Shelley's worse, if can be possible.
I don't think
But
he's worse.
so I don't know. Let's talk about the first one. So,
Okay.
well, or just tell me about your relationship with Friday the 13th.
Okay. I mean, I started rewatching them. For me, slash slasher movies and monster movies are my favorite thing, like my favorite things about horror, or my favorite genre of horror rather. um so those tend to be my comfort foods, especially slashers. I can put a slasher on at any time and it will usually hold my attention and be satisfying in some way, even if it's not one that I'm particularly fond of. And I like a lot of them. But my I fell in love. Probably slashers, thinking about it, are one of the things that made me fall in love with horror at a young age. Because I've said it on the show before, my parents had cable. Their rule was, they had issues with sex and nudity and that kind of stuff, but they didn't really care what kind of gore I watched. So I discovered slasher movies. It was at that time they were running Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3 quite a bit on cable. And I saw them many times and then started, I wanted to see the other Freddy movies, Jason movies, whatever. Um, and Freddy has always been my favorite of the slashers. Rewatching them this time, like I feel like I may have shifted a little bit more in Jason's direction because I'm watching these, and I mean the premise is very simple, especially with the first couple of them. They don't pretend to be anything they're not. They're simple, they're pure in what they're trying to do, and they're just fun. I mean, I'm not going to put on a Jason movie if I want something deep, but every time I put one on, I always enjoy it. Even the ones that, like, there are a couple that are not as good as the other ones, but I still enjoy them. I don't super love 3, and I think 5 is a little bit worse, but I could still put them on at any time and still watch it and have a good time with it. And they just, because of that, they feel comforting. So that's how I started rewatching them again. And I will just throw one on before I go to bed and watch it until I pass out. Sometimes it takes me a few days. So I've been falling asleep to Jason for the past couple weeks.
It, it is interesting, and I think it says a lot about the 80s and like our age and just the difference between the different generations and this and that, that like something that was so maligned by adults back then is so normalized and comfort food for us now. And part of it is definitely nostalgia. Like one of the reasons why I want to like these perhaps more than I do is because I was alive. Like I'm born in 76. So while I didn't see these until, somewhere in I started seeing them probably the late 80s, but I, they paint a picture of a world I very much knew and took part in. And not necessarily summer camp or being hunted and murdered, but
Right.
just the clothes, the vernacular, the music style, the automobiles on the road, the way everything wasn't corporatized and globalized yet. And so you could go to a small town and it had its own distinct character that, it was unaffected by the world around it or the big city that might even just be, a few miles away. And so they are comfort for me as well in a way. I mean, I found that a lot lately where it can be like a song that I didn't even listen to back in 1986 or 87 when it came out, but it's recorded in a way where I'm very aware it's from that era, and it's just like, oh, I close my eyes, I can almost. It's like it's almost time travel if I don't open my
Mm-hmm.
eyes. I almost can hear everything. I can feel what. And it's just interesting that we would find such comfort in things that like would have completely freaked, our parents and needlessly. Like, come on, they all were kind of like a little bit ridiculous. I mean, also, it, being a human being is a process, and we're all stupid. And we hopefully even as we get less stupid in some ways, we get more stupid in other ways. So the fact that like coming out of the 60s and the 70s into the 80s, like there were people telling our parents, I mean, not my parents specifically, and maybe not your parents specifically, but they were telling the adults in our world that like these will make your children kill people or they'll make them worship Satan or whatever. Like humans are stupid. So it's almost like the beginning of media saturation and manipulation. You almost can't blame them for falling for the fucking ruse because they didn't know any better.
Yeah, but they felt that way about everything we loved. I
Well,
mean,
they did because it was so different, right? I mean, and I always think of like, remember, like Ozzy Osbourne was such like a demonic
right.
figure in my childhood, and then 20 years later, everybody's parents are watching the Osbournes and they're like, oh, that
Right, on
Ozzy,
freaking
it's like,
reality
what?
TV.
Yeah. So,
But I mean, metal, metal horror movies, D&D, like these are all things they said we're going to turn your kids into devil worshipping serial killers, and most of us are the most well-adjusted humans I know, and by that we're completely fucked up.
yeah.
But we see more than a lot of people.
Well, because we're not afraid of every. I think that was another thing at that time. There were so many there was so much fear mongering, and not that there's not now, but I feel like we learned from seeing them go through that. Like, okay, you can take it easy. Like, that's not how that works.
Right.
I mean, in a lot of cases, they should still be held responsible for some of the shitty or awful things that they did because of this, like the Satanic Panic ruined people's lives and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So I'm not
Right.
excusing that, but I'm just saying, by and large, humans are fucking stupid. So
That's true. And the humans in these movies are stupid, but that's fine. We're not watching Friday the 13th movies because we expect these people to outsmart Jason. We want to see them get killed in ridiculous entertaining ways, and see how they're going to make it happen. Because
yeah,
I mean, the one of the biggest charms of these movies is that all the effects are practical.
yep,
I mean, this was in the 80s, so this is when we made monsters, didn't just conjure them on the computer. And
yeah,
the
right.
same thing with all of the gore, the deaths. There were people trying to figure out, Tom Savini and other special effects wizards figuring out how to make, all this crazy shit come alive. But it was people getting creative. And that's part of the charm too.
Yes, definitely. As far as slashers, I tend to lean more towards the non-franchise ones. Like I really like The Burning, I like The Prowler.
I like those
There's a
too.
couple others. And the reason for that is I feel like, especially like Nightmare on Elm Street's a very good example of like, to me, after four, it's so self-aware. It's not meta, or it is like, but not in the same way that Scream is, but it's so self-aware that they just get in their own way and they just get more and more ridiculous. Not that I have a problem with ridiculous kills, but like, I always go to, I don't know if it's five or six, where Freddy's literally wearing a Nintendo Power Glove and he looks at the screen and is like,
It's 6. Freddy's dead.
he looks at the screen at one point and says, like, now you're playing with power. And I'm like,
Yeah, he does.
you're literally quoting the commercial that is on at right like during the day at the at that time that was a commercial, right?
Yeah.
So that shit bugs the fuck out of me.
Oh, see, I find it amusing. Like,
It's I could see that it just
I
they
like
should
camp
be
though too.
they should be more. I mean, I know they're not going to be scary, but even if it's campy, there's a way to do it and still kind of like pack a punch. And I just feel like
And Jason does that.
he does.
It's not like the Freddy movies with the snarky comments and whatnot. Jason's not playing with power. Jason doesn't talk. He'll just bend you in half.
Yeah. So with the first one, the first Friday the 13th, watching it this time, I was surprised how much it actually, to me, it almost resembles a Hitchcock movie more than it resembles a slasher movie, as slashers became late, like let's say 5 years later. That surprised me.
That's an Why do you say that? Because I've never like I've never seen it that way.
Even though they're moving the chess pieces, i.e., the camp people, around the board in the way of a slasher, right? Oh, you go off
Hmm.
and go get to screw, you go off and get drunk, whatever. But there's that element of you don't know who the killer is, and um, Harry Manfredini's music really feels like Bernard Herrmann's music in that one. And I don't know, the whole experience watching it this time, I was like, man, like the kind of mystery to it and whatnot, it's not as good. I mean, anybody listening is
Hmm.
like, fuck this guy, you know? No, it's not nearly as good, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like there's more Hitchcock DNA in the first Friday the 13th than I previously realized. And that was, it made me, the first one I've always liked. And I get into trouble later in the series. And as we go through the other two, I think I already told you, but I figured out where my big stumbling block was for sure.
I love the first one. However, it doesn't really start for me until part two. Like I kind of think of them as separate things. I can watch both and enjoy them, but and while I also like the off the beaten path slashers, the less the non-franchised ones like you, I love the big franchises too. They were what got me into horror in the first place.
Hmm.
And you know, I love the character of Jason. So the fact that we don't get Jason till the second one, the the first one is very good, but I don't love it the way I love the second one because that's more the start of the story. However, the first one, I love watching how they did those effects. Uh, it's all very well done. It was the first time that they were doing it. We've seen Tom Savini talk about this stuff many times, but not. And when I these and watch them now, I usually hear him in my head explaining how he did these things, and it makes me happy.
Hmm. That's cool.
it it makes me happy, and the Jason movies in particular, like they bring me back to like summers when I was a kid,
Yeah.
like 11 years old, up at 2 in the morning watching cable and that kind of thing. I never went to summer camp or anything like that. I don't even like summer, but I I like these movies. And Jason had always kind of been my second. Freddy was my first love, but now while I'm watching these again, I'm leaning more. I like Freddy movies are just they're fun, they're campy, they make me laugh. I love them. Jason isn't like the camp is there, but not in the same way. Jason himself is stoic and serious, and it's a monster that I love.
Hmm.
Like because I tend to think of like the big slashers, they're still monsters. They're
Yeah.
still monster movies. Um, the early ones are a little bit weird because up until we get to part seven, where we get Kane Hodder, and then we have somebody playing Jason the same way for multiple movies. It's a different Jason every time,
Yeah.
and it's a little disconcerting sometimes, but yeah, I love the character anyways. So the first one for me, it just kind of it sets the scene. I think of it as a standalone movie. I think it was brilliant for its time. Like it was a very cool reveal at the end. And then like we get the beheading and all that stuff. So it was a cool who done it slasher before they were doing a lot of those. But I still like it better after we get Jason.
You know, it's interesting because I don't know how old I was when I saw the first one, but I had seen other ones before I'd seen that one.
Which one did you
And
see first? Because for me it was four.
so it was either five is the one at the lunatic asylum, right? Or
Uh-huh.
the whatever.
Yes.
Okay, so it was either that or this is like somewhere around I want to say 86, 87. It was either that or is it six that starts with Tommy Jarvis in a move of absolute brilliance, jamming a metal rod into
Yes,
in a lightning
it's a
storm.
fucking lightning rod.
So it was
Oh,
one of those. Now, I don't know that I saw the full movie of Six at that. I remember that image distinctly because I remember thinking, like, even as a kid, I mean, I was probably 10. I was like, this dude's a fucking idiot. Like, what the fuck? Have you not seen Frankenstein? Um, but when I saw one, it was like, I want to say mid to late 90s. So late, you know. And
okay,
this is like really pre-internet and like
right.
people would talk about Friday the 13th, but I didn't know any of the reveals in the movie. So it was like a thing where I think I came home from wherever I was working, got high and put it on and watched it by myself. And like you get to the Pamela Voorhees thing, and I was like, wait,
Hmm.
what? And you get to the lake, and I was like, wait, what?
So you were a bit older when you saw it then, because I still saw it as a kid. After, I mean, once I became obsessed with part four, I would rent the video, or parents would my parents would rent me the videos. Um, but I had a similar reaction the first time I saw one because, like you said, no internet or anything. I didn't know it wasn't going to be Jason.
Yeah, and you already know
So,
Jason's the killer, so that's what you're
right,
expecting, right? So it's like you're coming into this where it's already pre-formed, and you just have an idea because of the zeitgeist and like people talk about, you know what it is, right?
right. But, 11-year-old me who loved part four is like, wait, what the hell? Where's Jason? And then I saw the second one. It's like, oh, okay. So now here's my monster, and eventually he'll get the cool mask. But
Yeah,
as a kid, um, I honestly part part two is one of my favorite ones, and I do love the potato sack mask. I think it's
I
scarier.
do too.
Like I think it's way scarier. But the hockey mask is way cool. So
Well, it's like the hockey mask is iconic, and it wouldn't have
right,
worked to keep the potato sack for,
right.
15 movies or whatever. But I will
But for
say,
that movie, that that potato sack with that one eye staring at you is it's creepy. It works.
well, it's backwoods, right? They're out in the middle of the
Yeah,
forest, so it's very
right.
backwoods. And on all those figures NECA released a couple years ago for each successive movie, the one that I almost bought was a potato sack. I just looking at it, I was like, God damn it, it's fucking cool. Um, I will say caveat. I actually maybe think I saw four first, but it would have been when it was
Well,
on cable.
four was running on cable when I was a kid, and you're a few years older than me, so you would have been in high school. I was probably somewhere between 9 and 11 would be my guess.
Well, I'm thinking when I saw it, I would have still been in the first house we were in, which was pre 85. So I think, I think 80, it came out in 84. So I'll bet it was 84 or 85, where I had a friend, Daniel Webster, up the street had cable. And that's where I saw like randomly the end of Halloween 2 in the hospital where the gas thing
Okay,
explodes, the oxygen thing explodes.
yeah, that used to
And
be on cable a lot.
I'm pretty
Halloween
sure
too.
I saw part of part four there, but I had no context for it at the time. I mean, I just remember like trying to form like a ghost hunting club, and I mean, I had to be like, I don't know, 84. So let's say this is somewhere around that time. So I would be 7 or 8. I remember trying to form a ghost hunting club, and like I wrote up rules, and one of the rules was like you have to watch all the Fridays the 13th without closing your eyes.
And yet you hate the Monster Squad.
I no
Like, what
no.
the hell?
Well, the thing with the Monster Squad, I had never heard of that movie until Ray brought it up like
See,
15
I
years
grew
ago.
up with that
I'd
movie,
never heard of that movie.
and it was airing when I was about that age. So, I mean,
And
I wanted to be those kids.
when I was seven, six, seven, eight, the Universal monsters were my jam. So I think that's after that for me. Well, so which one did you already say which one you saw? Which one did you see for four, right? That's the one you saw
Four is the
first.
one I saw first. But so then after that, I rented the videos in order.
Okay.
Be I mean, because so then the next one I watched was the original, and you know, I was a little bit sad that there wasn't any Jason, but it was still a really cool movie that had really cool kills, and I still love, really liked it. I love it more now than I did when I was younger because I wanted Jason. Um, the second one is one of my favorites. I mean, we get Jason. I love the potato sack mask. You've got I Ginny is one of my favorite final girls in the Friday series. Um, so that one is of the three, the first three. I like the second one the best, followed by the first one, and then I have some issues with the 3D one. I think they missed the mark, but it was the
Oh
80s.
yeah.
But the second one, I you've got one of the strongest final girls in the series, in my opinion. Um, it has more fun deaths. You get the wheelchair guy with the machete to the face. Um, and the second one we just saw, I don't remember her name, but it's Vicky in the movie. She was just in A Violent Nature
Yeah. The
as
woman at the end.
the woman in the woman at the wheel. Um, so I mean, I feel like the second one is where the Fridays really get rolling because that's where they kind of find their rhythm. And then by the third one is when we get Hockey Mask Jason, and we go from there. But
Lauren Marie Taylor.
okay, she's the one from who's in Violent Nature too.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one, the second one has like I feel like it's got a good creep factor. It's before things got really cranked up to 11.
It still has a little bit of that Hitchcock DNA, not as much, but it's still actually that's the wrong. I don't maybe it has no Hitchcock DNA, but it still is closer to that than it is to like what comes after. And I feel like
What comes after?
three is a dividing line and could have been a disaster. I really, but two, I when I watched these in like 2018, 2019, I remember kind of being like nonplussed by two, but this time I enjoyed two a lot. I think two is strong, and I figured out what my stumbling block with this series
Okay,
is it's three. And it's probably also five because I think five is also kind of dog shit, but
yeah, those are the two I think are the weakest as well.
three is
Not counting
really bad. Like
three
it's
is really bad,
really,
and
really bad. And it's the same
it's
fucking director. It's Tim Miner as two, same director.
and it's sad because I mean, in my opinion, the only thing 3D is really good for is cheesy horror movies, and like they missed the mark with three because they weren't using it enough for the depths.
No, they're
I
using
mean,
it for dumb
they're
bullshit.
using it for dumb, right? Just things they can make pop out at the screen, popcorn and pool cues and stuff. Use it to enhance the depths, but you do get that one really badass, the arrow through the eye,
Yeah,
and
that's well,
like
once he gets the
that.
mask, it gets better. It
Yeah,
does get better.
and all right, what the fuck? Like Shelly's death happens off screen, and we don't actually see Jason
So
put the mask
disappointed.
on. Like that's what people want to see.
I didn't
We
remember that at all.
I didn't give a fuck about popcorn popping at the screen. I wanted to see Jason put the mask on. And we don't get that. We don't see him kill Shelly. We just see him come out of the house, or come out of the building, and he's walking down the dock. that's the first time we see Jason wearing the mask, but we
Yeah.
don't actually see him get the mask.
I would have liked to see that as well. And like if he like looked at it in a way that was like, oh,
Right.
I've found
I found
home,
my space.
Yeah. But also, goddamn, would I have liked to see him just pull Shelley apart piece by piece, because that is one of the most annoying characters ever on screen. Like,
See, he doesn't
ugh.
he doesn't bother me half as much as the dude from part four, the one who's always giving Crispin Glover a hard time.
See
The
now,
you're a dead fuck guy. He's obnoxious.
well, so I'll be watching part 4. My memory it just gloms onto the Glover dance. It's that and
That's
Feldman.
all you ever remember.
I mean, literally, like that's all I remember. And again, a lot of these, it's just until I watch them, I'm like, oh, okay, that's in this movie, that's in this movie. But Feldman, especially at the end where he like shaves his head and shit, is that's
Hmm.
just such a weird. It's just so fucking. And his affectation for the masks is cool, and it's almost like to make up for Shelley, who also has an affectation for the masks, but is a fucking
Right.
dildo. And like I like
Shelley
Feldman's
Shelley doesn't
character,
bother
and
me that much.
yeah, exactly. Well, but but the Glover dance is just the greatest thing ever in cinema, possibly. It just
But
is. I can literally put that on, watch it in a loop, and just be, mindlessly smiling.
yeah, part three just kind of makes me sad because it if they had used the 3D to enhance the deaths more, it would be amazing. I want like
I,
eyeballs and shit flying at the screen, arrows and
I
spears and
How do
not
they not
popcorn.
think of that? Like I just don't.
Right.
It almost feels like they rushed to make it. And again, it's the same
They
fucking director, but
but
I
they
feel like,
probably did because that was at the height of
yeah,
80s slasher dumb and they're trying to crank these out every year
yeah.
in rapid succession. But still, I mean, the deaths are important in a slasher movie. Like, why would you not enhance those? And that one death with the arrow through the eye
It's the
is
best
cool.
death.
Oh
And
yeah,
I mean, that's like
and that's what we want.
it's almost like they didn't have the time or the money to
That
do
could be it.
any of that. And I just so they waste I just feel like the whole first 2 acts, it's just wasting my time. That's how I feel. Like it's wastes the movie's time and it wastes my time. And it really bothers me because, like, yeah, it's a slasher movie. The deaths suck until that third act, right? So I
Hmm.
just don't. And again, being the same directors too, I just have to imagine there was constraints put in place by studio or producer, something, whatever, and it was just like it just got made at a breakneck pace, and then later they were like, oh God, if we had just stopped for a minute to think,
Right.
we could, but I think every couple movies when there's a really bad movie, it really affects my rhythm with the series, and that's probably why I couldn't, do it last time.
Okay.
6, well, no, we'll talk about 6 when we get there. I,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. We already jumped ahead. So when we talk about 4, 5, and 6 next time, I won't bring up the Glover dance. I probably will, but I'll try to
Yes,
keep it
you will.
minimal.
Yes, you will.
Uh,
But it's fine.
but 2, I did really enjoy 2 this time, and I think of the first 3, it's the strongest. And yeah, the first one is kind of an anomaly. I do like that as well. And again, I like I I had said something to somebody, I don't know, a couple years ago, where I was like, man, it's no wonder like all that satanic panic and like kids got molested and shit back in the fucking 80s, like parents like sending their kids off to summer school or summer camp and shit like
Summer camp.
that. And who I don't remember who I was talking to, like, I went to summer camp, and they were like younger, and I was like, wait, they still do that? They're like, yeah, they still do it now. I'm like, I thought this was the equivalent of like, oh, now we know that, you know, I don't know, smoking is bad, sugar, like all this stuff, like we understand that there is a correlation, right? Whereas, like, when my dad was a kid, he got packs of cigarettes for Christmas because nobody knew. I'm not casting aspersions on people that smoke. I'm just saying, like, we understand the ramifications now. So I thought it was kind of like that, where it's like, oh, let's stop sending our kids, because what is summer camp, right? Mom and dad are like, oh, Jesus, can we just have like 4 weeks to like just drink and see our friends and screw and not have the fucking kids in the house? Is that possible? Yes, it is. Let me tell you about our summer camp. You don't even have to tell us about summer camp. Take our kids. It's fine. Take them for 4 weeks. Um, I mean, I'm being, blasé about terrible things happening. I don't mean it that way, but I'm just saying, like, I just feel like is it not a recipe for fucking disaster, right? Here's a bunch
Well,
of
and
fucking kids
you've got
going
a bunch
off and
of
they have teenagers
teenagers,
as counselors. Yeah, as
right?
counselors, right? Like, come on. I
Maybe
that
there's one or two adults, but it's mostly teenagers watching other kids.
what struck me, okay, I know this is true of two. There are no campers, right? It's
Right.
just
Correct.
like the what's his name getting his like counselors, like this is our before the campers arrive kind
Yep.
of thing, right? Is it
Yeah,
also the
you do.
case with the first and the second and the third one too?
Well, the first one, yes, there are no kids in the first one. They're getting the camp ready.
It's the same thing with
Um,
three too, right?
well, three isn't
Oh, it's not
like
a camp. That's right.
it's not
That's
a
just a
camp. It's like
yeah,
they're
that's right.
camping or something. They're like
Yeah,
camping in a cabin or something, but it's not like summer camp.
that's right.
No,
That's
you
right.
don't. Yeah, no. And then the fourth one, you don't have kids there either, except for Tommy. You really don't get kids at summer
6.
camp until 6.
Yeah. Which leads into my favorite scene, maybe in the well, other than Glover dancing, is in 6. But we'll get to that when
But
we
we'll
do
save
those.
that.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no kids, no no kids at camp until part 6. Otherwise, the only kid we have is part 4 with Tommy, because it's all teenagers renting the cabin next door.
I've almost bought that set so many times, the Scream Factory one, and
Okay. I have a set. I don't think it's the screen, it's not a fancy one.
no, but well, the thing is, it was out of print forever, right? So Scream Factory got the rights to do it. So it's like now you either buy the
Okay.
one you have, like from somebody's, aftermarket, and it'll probably be expensive anyway, or you buy the Scream Factory. I know the Scream Factory, there
Okay.
were like
Yeah, mine's
issues with
old.
it.
I've I've had mine for a long time, so
Don't matter. I mean, they're old movies. That's the kind of thing. I don't think you need it on Blu-ray. I don't, I mean, a DVD is just fine, I feel like.
right. And they don't like I don't want the Friday the 13th in 4K
Yeah.
fanciness. You can see zits on people's nose. Like the little bit of grit is part of its charm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I
it
agree
it won't
100%.
feel it wouldn't feel the same way. It's like the difference between listening to music on vinyl.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, like Mike, to the listeners, that's our friend Mike Shinnebarger who co-hosts Drinking with Comics with me. He really hard sells like the Vertigo, uh, I don't know what they're called, deluxe editions or whatever. So they took like Sandman and they
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, those big hardcover. He loves
yeah,
those.
and they've rescanned them and they're really beautiful and they clean them up. And I'm like, I want it to look like it looks, where it's got a little
Hmm.
bit of like, it's got a little bit of fuzz to it.
Right. It's like watching an old movie in a theater, and you still get like the pops and crackles.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And which, became the affectation where like the same way what in the 90s, like people invented like the sound you can put for the vinyl pops and hisses on your track. So it sounds like it's vinyl, right? And then also, like Ty West's first movie, The Roost, one of the things that
Oh yeah,
blew me
yeah.
away about it when I saw it the first time was I was like, This literally looks like I'm watching this on UHF in 1985 at 2 in the
At
morning.
2 in the morning.
Like
Yeah.
it literally looks like that. And that just blew me away. So, not everything needs to be high def.
Right. Yeah. I don't want Jason in high def. I want it to look like the 80s movie that it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, they are beautiful in their simplicity, and that's part of it too. Like that's part of the charm.
What do you think it is about the simplicity that appeals to you?
I don't know. I never I never really thought about it until recently when I was watching them again. And I mean, and again, nothing against the Freddy movies. I love them, and I love the super complex, bizarre deaths that even in all their goofiness. But I don't know. I think it's that Jason's just he's brutal. He doesn't stop. It's but they still find ways to make it interesting. It doesn't have to be drawn out to be badass. I
Yeah,
mean,
well said.
machete to the wheelchair guy gets a machete to the face and rolls down the porch, and like, and it's awesome. It doesn't have to be, I mean, some big elaborate thing. Not that the big elaborate thing isn't always good, isn't also good, but sometimes you just you want it straight up. You don't want it watered down. Just
Yeah, right.
simple is better. I mean, and I get in the mood for both, but I'm finding that most of the time simple is better. And I think part of it too is when I would play D&D, when I first started doing it, I wanted to try all the different types of characters you could play, and I thought that's what I needed to do to be a better gamer. I have since learned that you like what you like. Play what's fun, watch what's fun. It doesn't have to be super complex to be a good thing.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we all start with simpler things, and then when we discover the capacity within ourselves for more complex things, we look down on simpler things. But everything can't be complex. It's like
Right.
all, all deaths, great and small. To paraphrase,
Yeah.
there's definitely, and there's times when I'm in the mood for something that's really high end or gonna, there's times when I'm in the mood for Tenant. And there's times when I'm in the mood to just see some motherfucker take a machete to some fucking stupid, college fuck's face. And
Right.
in both scenario, the opposite will not suffice
Right.
because it's what you're in the mood
For
for.
sure. Exactly. And I mean, me and my cousin Jimmy used to always talk about, I mean, growing up all our lives, who's better, Freddie or Jason, Freddie or Jason, and, you know, and all the different reasons why. And somewhere along the line, I realized it's not that one's better than the other one. I love them both. But like you said, when I'm in the mood for, you know, gore and the snarkiness, it's going to make me laugh. I'm going to watch Freddie. But when I want that, I don't know, that comforting feeling of being 11 years old watching horror movies at 2 a.m., I usually put on Friday the 13th. Not the first one. Usually part 4. The reasons that I love Jason aren't the same reasons I love Freddy. And it's
Right.
fine. Jason doesn't he doesn't have a lot to say, and that's just fine. Freddy will
Freddie,
talk enough for both of them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Freddie will overdo it sometimes, especially when he's got a fucking power glove on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not getting it.
I
The
was
funny
so,
movies
yeah.
are supposed to be. I mean, it's it's funny.
But
I
they're
usually hate comedy, but I love comedy and camp in my horror. I mean, not always, but
I think they
that's how I
just
get
go
my
too
humor.
I think they go too far with it after four. Like four to me is still really, but maybe we'll deal with those films on their
Right.
own. But yeah, so that's our take on Friday the 13th, part one, part two, and part three. Missy, you have any closing thoughts?
I mean, just just watch them again. They're fun.
Skip three,
You
or
can
at
skip three.
least skip to the last, what is it, like 25 minutes or something like that, you know?
Yeah, the last half hour is fun. Once you get past all the stupid, we're gonna poke things at the screen because we're in 3D. But I mean, if you're looking for something just light and fun, watch them again. They're, I mean, I always find them enjoyable. Even part three, even though I roll my eyes a lot.
I'll be curious to do these next couple triads, um
Yeah,
because
because
like with
then,
four, five, and six, I think five is the dinger, I think, and then
well, and then when we get to seven, eight, and nine, they're all Kane Hodder.
what is nine?
Well, nine would be Jason Goes to Hell,
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. uh
which I have not watched in a million years, but I was going to watch again anyways. So, because you've been talking it up for a while, so I have to give it another chance.
and seven, I didn't make it through last time, and then eight, I don't know if I've ever seen all of eight. Manhattan,
Oh, I love it. That's
I've
one of my
seen
favorites.
chunks of it at least, but I can't guarantee. Like I know I watched it, but I have a feeling when I was watching it would have been right when it came out on video, and I feel like I was at a friend's house. There were a bunch of us there, and we were probably like, I don't know, just fucking around
Well,
and stuff, and not paying 100% attention.
Manhattan, I mean, the last half hour is in Manhattan. The first half of the movie is on a boat.
Yeah, yeah. I seem to. In fact, that may have been. I feel like there may have the words either came from my mouth or one of my friends at the time. Like I thought this was supposed to be in fucking New York.
Right,
But
and
I,
2/3 of the movie is on a boat, and then the last half hour is in Manhattan. But
yeah. But that's one, two, and three. And at some point we'll come back and do four, five, and six. But until we
yep,
do that, I'm Sean,
and I'm Missy.
and the Horror Vision Horror Podcast advises you to stay the fuck out of the goddamn woods. And don't send your kids there either.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20 soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadow Play in Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.